But whenever this guy would call me for a meeting, I would know my day has ended, even if it was at 11 in the morning, because so the guy, you knew that his preamble would take 45 minutes. Before you put in a word, the guy would talk for 45 minutes, making his point, and he would never allow you to interrupt him. And then after 45 minutes, then he presents his whatever it is he wanted to tell you, and and then you only get around to start a discussion after about an hour and 15 minutes or an hour and a half. And then remember, there is back and forth. You have to engage with him, and so you know that there will be people like that. I mean, they have their ways. They are not going to change their ways. You just have to live with them. So I had those types of people, and then you have colleagues, and so there are also those types of people. So what we've gone and done as a result of okay, so I have to apologize now because the Spaces guys have gone off. So now I have to get them on. So just give me a few minutes. Spaces doesn't take too long to get started. Let me get the Spaces guys back on. 2 minutes for the guys who are on. Then I'll restart this. Don't worry. Today we don't have to rush. Last week we had to rush because there was an important address. Today's Friday. You're in your homes anyway, or at least you should be. So let's get started and do this again. So I'm just getting my guys back on, the guys on Spaces. So I'll be a minute. So, okay, that is... Whoa. Good. Yep. Boom. Okay, so I hope it's working now. Let's see. Okay. Right. Okay, so I think I've managed to get this back on. I hope the guys can join again, because, as I said, our network is a bit funny, but anyway, we shall survive. Yeah, I know. Yep. Good. Right, so, okay, so the guys listening on Spaces, sorry, I lost my network a bit. So I hope you're all back on and you can hear me. Show me a sign. Aaron Mpologoma, can you show me a sign that I am back on? Oh, yeah, brilliant. Okay, Emmanuel Ekesi, thank you so much. Okay, so I was telling you that we've gone and created, so because of these experiences with difficult people, and we meet them everywhere, family, school, at work, clients, customers, even in fellowship, they're there. Sports, you name it. There are all these difficult people in those places. And we have created incredible names for them. We call them weird, we call them toxic, we think they are mad, mavericks, crazy. The words we use are endless, but they're there. And by the way, don't be deceived into thinking that it's only the other guys who are difficult. It's also you guys, even you yourself, even me. I think there are people out there who say, but that guy is difficult. So we all have a measure or a degree of being difficult. The question is, to what extent do you show some of the traits that I want to talk about? And this always comes, and as I said, because of the people that I met and the experiences that I had with them, there are things that these people taught me. One of the lessons I learned was patience. And why am I talking about patience? Because some of these people, you knew they were difficult, but you needed to have a relationship with them. It's as simple as that. You had to have a relationship with these people because it's just the nature of work. That's the way things happen. You have to relate to them. So those guys, you had a different strategy. Then the others were difficult, but you needed them because you had a particular task to do. So you needed only to relate with them to the extent that you could do that task. That's all you really required. So with those ones, again, I had to apply a completely different strategy. You bear the guy for the time that you need to get that job done, and you know that after this, you don't have to ever live with these people again. So that's it. You apply a completely different strategy. So what I would say now, and what I learned then, is that one, you have a responsibility. You, as the one who has to deal with difficult people, you have a responsibility, one, to know that you're going to run into difficult people. That's a rule. Whether it's, as I said, it's in your family. You might even marry a difficult person. So just be prepared. Your job is to figure out what it is about this person that makes them complicated, as we say, or difficult. Your job is to learn their character traits. So it's absolutely important that you invest. If there's only one thing you learn today, it's absolutely important that you invest in understanding people. Invest in understanding people and their character traits. What is it that motivates them? What is it that drives them? Those are the kinds of so you as a person, you owe it to yourself to learn how to deal with people. That helps because then it prepares you. It prepares you for the situations that you will find yourself in. So let's get on. I mean, I think a good place to start really is figuring out what are the normal or the traits that we know, or the personalities that we could say are difficult. And I'm going to try and lay them out for you so that you can sort of recognize them. Because so in the course of my work and the life that I lived, there were people, these ones used to frustrate me like hell, and they just make you pull your hair out. These guys are absolute. They're the ones in an organization or in a place. These are the people you call brilliant guys. Absolutely sharp, brilliant fellows. The problem with some of those, and that's where they became difficult, is that as soon as brilliant people get bored, that's it. Even if you do, as they say, or used to say, even if you do what or what, the guy just won't do the task that you gave them. And it's as simple as that. So you have those types of people. He's competent, he's brilliant, he's a nice guy, but he just won't do the task because he's bored. So you have those guys, you know it. You know the guy is brilliant, but he's just not delivering on time or not delivering at all. You look for him, he's nowhere to be seen. So those types of people exist. I'm sure you've met them. Absolute genius, brilliant guy, competent, knows what he's doing. He just loses interest in the task you've given him. End of story. So there are those types of people. And those, for me, they just used to frustrate me because you look at a guy and you know he's competent and he can deliver the task you've given them. But then suddenly, he just goes off. Then there are these ones, I am sure you met them. There are guys who, for them, they are just outright anarchical. I mean, these guys are just rebels. And for them, they don't mind getting involved in reckless behavior. They are the kinds of guys who will go and put in a beer and then abuse the boss. These are the kinds of characters. And these fellows, they just can never be in any kind of structure. And when you put them in a team, they just cannot function with many people around them. So these kinds of people are always causing problems. They get bored easily when they're sitting in a group. They immediately start stirring up trouble. If you remember them in school, they were the guys in class. As soon as the lesson starts, They're the first guys to start talking. They're the ones who chew paper and then throw it on the blackboard. You know, you remember all these guys. These are all the kinds of difficult people. So there's also that type. And for them, they are just reckless. Sometimes they do it for the thrill. it just drives them. They want to do something and then just to see what kind of kick they get out of. I have a cousin who told me a story of one time when he was in high school. He looked at the teacher, looked at his beard, and decided to pinch it, just for the sake of it. So there are those kinds of people, and they become so difficult to manage in a team because they can actually cause a lot of instability in the team. They cause people to just move on. These are the kinds of guys who lead strikes in schools. At work, they're the ones who just go against the grain and make things difficult for you, or you know, they oppose the boss for the sake of opposing it. They just never are rational. Then there were the drama guys. These ones, I'm sure you know them. These ones are, their job, they are attention seekers. These guys just love to be the center of attention. So they are always looking for validation. They're always looking for approval. And these guys, I used to find them a drain because they have to keep coming back to you. Is what I'm doing the right thing? Is this? And you're thinking, I laid it out for you. So there are those types. You basically become a babysitter rather than a team leader or a manager. And some of them, if you don't then do that, then they sulk. And it's worse if the guy is either your boss or is sitting in a process that has to deliver something for you. Then you know you have to put in extra time, extra energy to deal with this attention seeker. I mean, it's never easy with these types of guys. So there were also those ones, and they just wanted you to know that, yeah. And at every small opportunity, they dramatize everything. They're the guys who walk into an office and tell you the company is on fire, or the guys who call you from home and say there's no food at all, there's nothing, and then you know, so they really throw you off balance. And then getting back, then you realize the situation is not. So they are the, what do you call them? They're the cry wolf type of difficult characters. So there's that group, and so that group of people. Then there are these types also. They are what we call the flamethrowers. These guys, they don't even wait to hear the full story. They just ignite and blow up. And by the time you figure out that actually all of that was unnecessary, the guy has done so much damage around the place. And with time, they are so incendiary. They are so, you know, they just explode. They're also prone, as I discovered, they'd have these mood swings. These guys, the guys who just flare up all the time. In most cases, these guys are very difficult to get along. And you know, you can't, even if you try. Today you're sitting and having a fantastic time with the guy, then a small thing ticks him off and he's shouting at you. And you're wondering whether what you did was commensurate to, or whether you even did anything at all. So you have those types of difficult guys. Then, this one I know you will all love. They are what I call self-promoter par excellence. This is the famous narcissist. These guys love themselves so much. But as I discovered, most times they were in love with an image of themselves, not who they really actually are, but an image of themselves. They've created this image of who they are, and then they spend all their lives trying to portray this image, and in the process the rest of us are watching and thinking, no, you're not that, but we have to bear with you. And it gets worse if these guys are in a position of power. Those guys are deadly. But these are the types of people who basically, I'm sure you've had them, the name drop. You know, today I was with the minister so and so. The typical one which I used to always hear all the time is, Mose called me this morning. Those types, those guys, name dropping, bragging, and when you're having conversation, they are the guys who, for them, they've always done something better than what the story you're trying to tell. Or any social interaction is a competition of some kind, or in meetings, they have all these grand things. So these are guys who are really something else, and in bragging you can't beat them. And then they're also very domineering. They can be very domineering because they're trying to push you to accept something which you know you don't accept, and then they become irritating. But deep down, by the way, and I'll say this to you, what I discovered is for most of these guys is they are masking something. They are trying to hide a deep insecurity, something that they're struggling with. So they have this make-believe personality that they want you to buy into and accept. So they don't stop at anything. They will do anything to promote that line of thinking. So there is that group of difficult people as well. By the way, and I'm not saying that these people exist in boxes. Each one of us, each and every single one of us has elements of all the things I have just talked about. It's just which ones we push the most and whether we're self-aware enough to know that some of these attributes and traits are negative and actually sabotage our ability to grow. Because remember that we're in this whole session, it's about us being able to grow. And we find that difficult people make it impossible for us to grow, or they get in the way of our growth process. But also we ourselves may be the difficult people that are sabotaging our own ability and our own growth process. Then there's also this group which I found. There were guys who are just, for them, they're just control freaks. These are the guys in any setup or in any organization. They insist that a certain procedure must be followed. It doesn't matter whether the procedure makes sense or not, whether you're in an emergency or not. They just insist on that procedure. Even if the house is on fire, they don't know. Can you fill this form? But what is the purpose of the form? No, you fill it and then put a full stop here. You forgot to stamp this. They just never know the difference between procedure and pedantry. They're just, for them, and they want to budge. They will never move. For them, that's how they control. And those types of people that I discovered, what they do for you is they want to make sure that everybody fits within those little boxes and structures and, you know, so, and the rules, and they're quoting, and they become experts at quoting the rules, because for them, in their minds, if these rules are not obeyed, and they're not in control, and without this control, a disaster is likely to happen. And so in the process, these guys come through as one, overbearing, two, they can be very invasive and domineering. Sometimes they actually even become obstructive. They just won't budge or move. They'll just stay there and make a process stall until things move in the manner in which they are used to. Because for them, they're just sticklers. And they like to come through. The argument they make is, you know, for me, I'm thorough. Or for me, I'm a stickler for rules. But that's not the point. The point is that you are actually just a control freak, and you're making life impossible for everyone else. And so those kinds of people also exist. Right. And then we have the guys who are experts at avoiding any form of responsibility. They just will not take on anything. For them, this is it. So normally these guys are very introverted. Two, they can come through as quite rude. And normally the reason is, and therefore they're very difficult to get along with. You know, you can't access them. They're so closed. They're isolated. You can never access who they are. And to get them to do things, you know, it's almost like, you know, doing gymnastics or being in a circus. These people are difficult, as they say, or complicated. So, and sometimes they end up being really callous, or coming through as callous, as uncaring, or they just have no empathy and just don't care about others. They're like that. Sometimes they're blunt in their statements. There's just no sense of occasion. They can even be cold and unfeeling. So these guys, by the way, it is better, as I learned. By the way, another thing is they really fear criticism. These guys, because deep down, they cannot handle rejection. So they would rather be on their own. Now the problem is that we live in a society, even with these lockdowns and so on, we're still in a society and we must collaborate. We must deal with people one way or the other. So dealing with introverts of this case is also, and by then most of them tend to also be very highly skilled, very intelligent people that we need in an organization or in a place to help us to do work. But because of this nature, they become impossible to deal with. The guy disappears and switches off all contact, no phone, no nothing, and is in his own world. You look for him, it is time to do a job, and the guy can't be found. So you have those types of complicated characters who are those ones are also there. Then, then there are my friends who take themselves far too seriously. They don't even have time for a joke. They can't make fun. They are so wooden, even in their manner of dress. These guys, I am sure you have seen them. I mean, the guy, he's always either in a suit with a tie. Even when you are going to the beach, the guy is like that. These guys, they can be rigid, and they can actually cause you stagnation, or you can never just get them to do the things that you want them to do, because the guys are just it's in their nature. They're just, no sense of humor, no lightheartedness, nothing. For them, this must be like this must be like this. They're so rigid, so almost like a robot, regimented. So there are those types of difficult people. So those also exist, and as I said, they can be rigid. Then this one, hey, we all know these ones, they are just so one. They whine a lot, they cling, they are so dependent, and these ones always also end up being very manipulative. So there are those ones, they can't move, they can't do anything. They just cling on to, and they can't stand on their own. They're so in need of I don't know how to even put it, being lifted up. And so you now find that you, on top of your own task, you have to babysit this one also and bring them. So those are the sort of, like, in general, the groups of people that I could say you could describe as really, really difficult, and the things to look out for really when you're trying to understand, how these people express themselves. As I told you, these people are normally callous, obstructive, they're aggressive sometimes, they're hostile and rude, they manipulate you and so on. Some of them are reckless. So these are the characters. And as I said, I must warn you, because sometimes we confuse things. Some people, sometimes we fail to understand or invest in understanding a person, and then we reach the dangerous conclusion that that person is difficult. It's we who have not understood the person, and then we make that very basic mistake, which is to say, that guy is too complicated, he's too difficult, when actually we haven't invested time in understanding this person. And sometimes you may think this person doesn't talk, so he's therefore proud, he doesn't, when we talk to him, he doesn't listen, and you find the guy is deaf, because you've never spent time to figure out, why does this person behave the way they behave? So please be careful. Not every person you fail to understand is difficult. By the way, human nature is complex. We're all complicated. And as I said, all of us, in our own way, we're all difficult or complicated or complex. And we all want to be understood. But just make sure that you are not writing people off because either they irritate you, or you don't understand them, or they're just, because you don't understand them. So that then puts you in a position to just write them off as difficult. No, just those are the traits to look for. They're very clear traits. People who are difficult, as I said, they flare up, they're aggressive, they're domineering, they're obstructive. Over time, you know the manners, and there's no better place to start. Look in your, as I said, look in your own family. In your own families, there's at least one guy who is difficult, and you can describe them as such. In school, at your workplace, in your fellowship, in your sports team, or whatever it is that brings you together, you will find these types of people. So please just make sure that you spend sufficient time to understand what it is that amounts to a difficult personality. Don't just write off people. And as I said, have the humility, you yourself, to know that even you, and that includes me, you are considered difficult by other people. And what is it about you that could be making you difficult? Which now takes me to something I had to teach myself when I found, and trust me, as I told you, I really had to deal with very difficult characters. And these were either, as I said, difficult customers, colleagues, people I supervised, clients, suppliers, different stakeholders. And it makes matters worse if any of these people find themselves in a very powerful position. There is nothing like a difficult person in a very powerful position, because those can really, really make your life hell. And that's why you've seen a lot of discussion, especially on social media, about toxic workplaces. So, what did I do? And how did I manage to deal with a lot of these guys? One, I spent time figuring out who I am and what are the things that would make it impossible or that would sabotage my ability to deal with difficult people. So one of the first lessons I learned about myself is that I used to be very rash. I would only hear the first part of something and I move, because I've always been a guy on the move and I just want to get on with things. So if you're that type of guy and you run into a guy who believes that he's meticulous and must go through everything and tick, you can be so frustrated, because that guy is not going to move. It doesn't matter whether you are whether you're operating at 2,200 degrees centigrade. He doesn't care at all. He doesn't really care, because for him, he's in his position or she's in her position and she's going to do what she wishes. And I'll give you an example. You get into offices and you get to the reception, and whoever is sitting at the reception is on their mobile phone and they're talking. And they are not going to wait, or rather they're not going to be rushed by your need to be attended to. So what do? Do you get into a fight with the person, or do you stand and wait? So I realized that because I was rash, those kinds of situations would really frustrate me a lot. So what then I decided that I needed to do is, before I go into a place, I must now first take control of that attribute of mine, being rash. Just wait. Don't you even practice it and rehearse. Robert, today, you breathe in. First of all, greet the person politely, be nice. But he's probably in charge of signing the form that will make sure you get what you want. So it doesn't kill you for you to greet somebody. How are you, sir? How is it? How are things? So learning the negative aspects about you that would make it difficult for you to deal with difficult people is absolutely essential. You must know what is it about yourself that you can't stand. What is it that when you meet difficult people, what is it that you find difficult to control? You owe yourself that lesson. So from today, the first difficult person that you need to handle is you. First go and check. This you that goes into situations, I'm sure you know the famous line, guys walk into a place, they are told that there is a line, and the first question they tell the guard is, do you know who I am? Now, please don't be one of those do you know who I am type of people, please, because you will provoke a situation, you may get there and find that the guard has not had lunch, didn't have breakfast, and he left home, there's no money. Now you come because you think you're a big deal, and you start telling him, I am not going to sanitize my hands. Do you know who I am? Well, he will probably teach you very soon who you are by putting a bullet through your head. Now, what will you do? And I've been in those situations before. I go there and I think, no, but your boss is the one who called me. Do you know? You tell him it is Kabushenga. The person is looking at you and thinking, I don't know who is Kabushenga. So along the way, I learned that there are certain things, and in my new circumstances, that lesson has come in handy, because now I am no longer what I used to be. So when I arrive at gates, now I must first come down, then walk with my hands behind, then I approach the guard. How are you, sir? Then when they recognize me, I play up the connection. It's important for you to connect with people. So learn yourself. The other thing is, please, and I've seen somebody has made a comment about people who drop names. Please, if you are dealing with a difficult person, let that person appreciate their importance. Show them that they are very important. Because this business we do, and I'm not saying you're allowed to be, because remember what your objective is. You have not gone there to contest this person. You have gone there to get something. Now don't get lost in the fights between you trying to prove. Your ego is confusing you. So I had to learn, as I said, the hard way. If your name is important, it will open doors. If your name is unrecognizable, it may be painful to you in your heart, but it's okay. Just remember, you are not there for recognition. You are there to get a certain something you are looking for. Please be polite. That's another thing. Be polite. Learn to be humble. But also, please, with difficult people, try and remain calm and patient. There's some people, a lot of people we admire. You see them, and in a mess, they're very unfazed. He's just there sitting. The more interesting ones, the ones who are amusing me. Madam is there abusing him, quarreling. The man is quiet like this. Then he stands up and says, let's go home. And she falls in line, they go home. So people understand their dynamics. But if all of you explode, then you have two difficult situations clashing. Now, also, if you are able to be humble and control yourself, it leaves you centered. Then you keep focused on what is important. Because also here is another danger. If you are not like that, then people learn how to provoke you. Because me, I used to like those situations sometimes. I would be difficult deliberately because I want to rile up the other person, knowing that they are going to go from 0 to like 300 in like a minute. So I would do it just to get them off balance. And that always, people can do that to you. So understand yourself, understand the things that sabotage you, and then work on them. It's not going to be overnight. It took me a long time, and I'm still learning how to be patient with people. But some of you, as soon as something doesn't go your way, you start flying off with the 4-lettered words. By the way, train yourself to avoid 4-lettered words. It really, really projects you in terrible light. So that's not the way to deal with difficult people. First, deal with yourself. You are the first difficult person that you need to control. So I had to know what my weaknesses are, and then know that there will be circumstances in which my office or my personality or my public profile doesn't really matter. And then some people don't even know you. And by the way, when you travel, then you go to countries and you realize you're not that important. I'll never forget one time many years ago, we went on a trip with a very senior government official. And on the way back, we got into an airport, and one of the protocol officers went to the immigration officer who was sitting. This was an Arab country. the immigration officer was sitting with his feet on the table, and the protocol officer went and said that that lady is a very important person in our country. She has a red passport. He looked at her and he said, can an important person from your country wear trousers? Now at that point, how do you deal with a guy like that? I mean, you can be held up. And by the way, they were held up because the rest of us were processed. We went through, and they had to call the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in that country and then bring somebody to handle these people. So you will be in situations where nobody really cares who you are or what you are. They're just doing their job. So don't ever let who you are or what you are get you into those into that mess. Now, as I said, learn to read people. I used to tell guys at the office, you must invest in understanding your boss or your supervisor. I'm going to use a really, really graphic example, and please forgive me. Why is this man very difficult? Okay? You may find that that man is actually, the problem is the man is impotent. And because he's impotent, he is trying to prove to everyone else that he's a man. And that involves him taking it out on you guys at the office. You must recognize that. If you then discover that, then you know how to deal with this guy now. You now know that for me to get results out of this fellow, or for him to leave me alone, I have to let him, or find a way of him believing in his manhood. Because the guy has a deficiency he's trying to deal with by taking it out on you. So you must understand what are the peculiar circumstances. The other example I used to give at the office, you may find that the man who is your supervisor is being beaten at home by his wife, and the man in his home is not a man. So the guy is bad. So just invest a bit in understanding this difficult person. What happened? Why are they like this? And it does help, because then it will determine what you deploy as your tool to deal with them. You must understand what is it that drives these people. Some people, like, as I said, like the serious ones, or those who like to be sticklers, they may have a reputation and an image they want to project. It has nothing to do with you. He just wants to be known that, and maybe he has built a reputation in his company that guy, if they send that guy, he's very difficult. So he has to live up to that reputation of being tough, of being... So all of these that you think are difficult, you need to invest in understanding what is this person's motivation. Why are they like this? And you can find out. How can you find out? You can talk to other people who know this person very well. So you may find that this person is maybe very prayerful or very what. I remember in the very early days when I had just joined to start the media center. I think I've told this story before, but I knew that I was going to have problems with the civil servants because I was coming from the private sector and we were supposed to have a different way of doing things. But I had to get along with guys who I knew were going to be difficult. So the first person I needed to deal with was the person who was going to approve any money that would come to us. So what I did in that case is I looked for something that would connect us. And as it turned out, Hassan was my friend. The moment I deployed or name dropped Hassan, her whole attitude to me changed completely. We were now not officials. She was talking to somebody who was like Hassan. And at that point, we had a completely different relationship. And it worked perfectly well. So if somebody is difficult, you invest, research, find out. Because you're the one who wants to work, who has to work with this person to deliver results. You find out this person, why, what is it? Where can I make the connection? And always what I used to do is, and this was taught to me by my friend Kwame Ejalu, is that you go into an office, please study the man's office setting or the woman's office setting. Look around. What is it that you can pick on that has an emotional connection with the person? As soon as you start conversation and you can do that, the guard immediately drops. Or if the person they are difficult, you can go and Google the person and research, find out what are the things that capture them. It might be sport. The guy might be like an Arsenal supporter, like me. So if he has lost the game on Sunday, when you go in on Monday, please commiserate with him. Don't start talking about Man United. You just have a problem. The whole, you don't get anything done. So you owe it to yourself to study the situation around you, or to, in your preparations when you're dealing with difficult people, find out their surroundings, their context. What are they? If and people learned that about me. They would come in and immediately start talking about farming, and then they knew they had moved me. So these things happen. Or find out who is the person that this difficult guy has a soft spot for. That's who you then deploy to go and soften the ground for you. Or if you think that it's going to be complicated, go to the extreme of what this guy likes. And if he rejects it, then you know that he has helped you. But going into a head-on opposition with some of those guys can lead you into clashes that you don't need. Now, you also have a responsibility. And this is what I did. As long as I knew that irrespective of, let me just check. I need to check with the guys on Spaces that I am still on. I need to be sure. Tony, am I on? Give me a thumbs up.
Absolutely on. I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, good. Yeah, I know you're a difficult guy, Tony. You went to roast Cheptegei instead of staying with us. But see you later. Okay. Now, I was saying to you guys that what you also need to do, you have to relate to difficult people, and sometimes you can't avoid them. So now it then is, what I would then do is I would say, okay, how possibly difficult can this person be that I cannot relate to them at all? So I would always find ways of common grounds if we interact. Say if I go to a cocktail and I find this person there and I know I'm going to need this person and I know they're difficult, I make sure I go and put in FaceTime, say hello, so that they remember me. I remind them of our interaction, and then I leave them, because sometimes we also make the mistake of trying too hard to connect with people. So when you're looking, just take time to establish rapport. Some people don't like kamanyiro, so please be careful. Take your time, build a rapport, even if it's in the office or in your context where you meet this person regularly. Just greet them, but don't be in their conversation. Just hello, you are there, be helpful. And when they suffer a situation, either a loss in their family and you know about it, go there. If there's a wedding, make sure you attend and make sure you show that you are present. Those little things. But you owe it to yourself with a difficult person to find ways to establish some kind of human connection. Now, the worst mistake that some people would make is they know that, Solomon is difficult. Now, instead of trying to establish because Solomon is also a human being, even if he's difficult. Instead of trying to establish a connection, what they do is they start cutting off and being officious. You send emails, send texts. That's not going to work, man. You have to be human. There has to be that human contact. Speak to the person. Over time, these people will realize maybe, but you may find that these people are just being defensive until they figure out who you are. You are non-threatening. And then they'll let you into their world. So build a relationship with difficult people, however difficult it is. And as I said to you earlier on, politeness, humility, and respect. All of us as human beings want to be understood and want to be respected. So even the most difficult guy, show them respect. Don't try to be their equal or to take them on, because you may lose the battle, especially if they occupy an office that has consequences for you. That's important. And also, when you run into difficult people, just focus on the issue. not on the guy's traits, because you'll get, as I said, you'll get distracted by, the noise and this and this and that. So try and focus on the issue with which you need to sort out with the difficult person. Of course, the problem is if the guy is out to get you and it's like your performance, what do you call it? Your performance appraisal. At the end of the day, it's a difficult situation. You have to find a way. Then, but there will be, maybe before I go to that, there's a one also which I found interesting. Please learn some ways of kissing people's behinds. Even these difficult people, you kiss a bit of behind, because it will help you. The question is, what do you lose? It's just one peck and you're done. Now, there are other people like the narcissists. Go and sing their praises. Tell them, the other day, I saw you, that suit which you had worn. My friend. Then the man say, are you sure? Then after singing the praises, you slip in your request. Can I have this? You'll get it very quickly. So some people, you're going to have to sing their praises, whether you like it or not. But don't worry the damage it does to you. You focus more on the benefit you're going to get, because the damage to you is just a bit of... So that's also something I learned. Some people, this one, it's inevitable. You take the lips, you do what has to be done, then you go away. But you go away with your thing under your armpits and you're happy. So there's also that. But there will be situations which are untenable. If it is become impossible, then you may have to refer, and sometimes when we would have an impasse, I would have to go to a very high authority. And that happened a few times. I just said, I have tried everything with this guy and it has failed. Now, let me go to a higher authority. Let me go to his boss. I take my case there because I understood that the boss would be more reasonable. In most cases, the boss is more reasonable and overrules this person who has been a problem. But you have to be prepared for the long-term consequences of that, because you've now become a target and an enemy. So if the guy is difficult, just decide that, okay, sometimes you have to say, you go for broke. As you say, come and buy, you now go to the bosses and say, I have been trying to achieve this outcome, but so and so is in the way, and there is no rational reason. Then they will probably call the guy and say, why are you opposed? The guy puts his case, and if he has no case, it's ruled in your favor. If he has a case, you deal with it. So yes, that time will come when you'll have to reach, but don't use it all the time. Don't all the time when you have a difficult person and you say, don't go all the time to the boss, because you also now are becoming childish. Just go when, and the stakes have to be so high that you need to go to the bosses. Don't go to the bosses with everything. The stakes have to be, and it has to be a matter of life and death. One on which you are prepared even to resign. Which then takes me to, I think what I would say is would be my final one to tell you. Sometimes you have to be firm with difficult people, very firm, and you have to tell them exactly where you stand. Now, if you are a subordinate, it would then mean that you may have to leave. And this one normally also does affect, not normally, but affects mainly the females, who, because the power dynamics, the female is a subordinate, the boss is a man, and he is asking for the impossible. My advice there, especially to the females, there are some things where it's not worth it, just to go. And speak your mind and say, this one I am not going to do. And for us, Bachiga, it helps a lot that we can be outspoken, so we say it. So you tell a person that, by the way, actually, I am very sorry to tell you, you are like this. And this way, I don't accept this kind of behavior. You may be my boss, but, this is... And then some people, have their bosses, but they have bad behavior. So you must call it out. And when you call it out, be prepared to take the full consequences. But those consequences may be better than the compromises you're going to end up making in trying to accommodate this person's difficult personality. So really, I think the point for me is be firm, be clear, and don't ever make it personal. It has to be professional. Even if it's personal, state it clearly and then say, and don't be insolent, don't be rude, just state as it is and be firm. When you're firm, people will know that they're not going to toss you around and you move. Now, depending on whether you are the boss, and if you're the boss and there is a subordinate or somebody below you who is difficult, then there comes a time when you must get rid of them because they are messing up the team. So you must get rid of them, and on that you must be forthright and do it. But if you are not the boss and you are the subordinate, as I said, you should be prepared to leave because you are not going to get rid of your boss. You don't have, unless of course you have other powers, then you can do that. Good. Question time now. I think we're more or less, I have done my professorial duties. So let me start with my sidekick on spaces. Tony, do you want to ask me anything? And it had better be intelligent.
To be honest with you, I mean, this, this is one of the hardest conversations to have. Because a lot of the time, when you think about the whole conversation of trying to deal with someone difficult, you're worried about the fact that people are probably judging you as a difficult person.
Yes.
Okay. So you're trying to navigate your but Robo, I personally have dealt with very many difficult people all through my career, and I'll tell you one thing. What has really worked for me? Again, I go back to stoicism.
Yes.
When you're so really pissed off and really angry, and you want to react, because the easiest thing and the quickest thing is to react. Come out very upfront and tell it as it is. But stoicism has helped me with one thing. The question of, is it necessary? Marcus Aurelius, is it necessary?
Yeah.
And how you deal with that in your own way and phase it out. I mean, you've talked about difficult people below you. That's easy. Difficult people above you, that is so tricky. And now,
you're between,
in comes the office.
you're between a rock and a hard place, man.
In comes the office politics. Now, how do you manage office politics? Because you see, office politics, you need to seem appeasing to. But I think what really stands out at all of this, or in all of this, is authenticity. Yeah. As an individual, who are you? What are your beliefs? What are the values that you believe in, and you are true to yourself when it comes to those, attributes? Yeah? And I think for me, that's what's really guided me. So I don't really have a question. I just must say, this topic, when you posted it, I was like, hey. So
I'll tell you on Twitter who got me into it.
Good weekend, Robert. Let other guys ask the questions.
Okay, Hashim, what do you have to say?
Hey, Robert. I just want to say, what a session. Thank you.
Oh, you're most welcome. Most welcome.
What a session.
Yes.
That's really all I wanted to say. I mean, you need to write. You need to write a book. You need to put together these things, especially these Friday sessions.
Hashim, people,
and write a book.
Hashim,
what a session.
People are still alive. I don't want to out them. Okay, thank you very much, Hashim.
Aye. Thank you.
Oh, you're most welcome.
I really enjoyed this one.
Okay, great. Hey, Ruben Musanyana. Ruben, are you there? Ruben. Okay. Stella Kamakune. Stella K.
Yes, Ruben is name. Yeah. Mr. Robert?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is Stella. Now, my question is, how can I differentiate between being a difficult person and someone staying on principle? Because you might find that, assuming, many of the big companies around,
yes,
you work with different people. So someone, you work in a group, and some of your colleagues want you to quiz on something, and then you say, me, I'm not part of this, or I'm not doing this.
Yes.
And the tendency goes on. So someone starts saying that now that one is a difficult person. So how do I differentiate between
dealing with people? So and having the skill to manage difficult people is key. So mostly about the introverts. You picked up the key things. They are greatly skilled. They have good talents, and they're usually good for an organization, but they sometimes switch off. And me being a self-confessed introvert, I thought maybe I should throw a little bit of light on that. I.e., when they switch off, usually it's because they're peopled out and it's too much, and they can't work at 100% when they're overly stimulated. Mm-hmm. So if is introverted, and do is to understand that they don't like to be micromanaged, and they like time to think, and therefore they need some time. So when they switch off, it's not personal, it's just they're trying to recover themselves to be able to give 100%. However, if the introvert is your boss, then, and you know that you study them and you realize that your boss is an introvert, then do not go to them about every little tiny thing. If they've given you an instruction, go do it. So don't interrupt them too much, because then they get peopled out. And I think the point you mentioned where you say the first difficult person we need to know and learn yourself is key, because you need to know the kind of person you are. That's all I wanted to share. Thank you.
Thanks, Damali. Peter Odeke.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you for this very exciting topic. Now, covered well dealing with persons that you report to and also your subordinates. But what I would like to know is, how would you know whether it is you who is the difficult person? And if you are the difficult person, how do you change yourself?
Peter, great question, man. Great question. First of all, it is going to take you time to find out that. But if everyone, you will notice that people have exactly the same problem with you, whether it is at home or at the office. That's one way of figuring out. And if you have a partner, the partner is probably one of the best persons to give you feedback. Because for them, they know you very well. They'll tell you that you are like this. That, by the way, because when you go back home, you start telling stories. I was at the office and this happened. The partner will tell you, but you also like this, you also like that. So that's one of the ways in which you find out. But, reflecting on the decisions you make and the people you affect. If you don't, then there are going to be problems in future, because you're going to discover all these things about your partner, but you're already in it. And now at that level, the question is either to have a frank discussion about the things you don't like, or to accommodate them and work around them for the rest of your life, or leave. So really, those are the three things. And then, of course, it also depends whether your relationship, especially Joy, the domestic relationship, has many external players, in-laws, friends. They make the situation worse, because they interfere with the ability of you to resolve the things, and then they're the ones who brand you as difficult and so on and so forth. But let me not go into that territory, because it's a bit difficult for me also. So let me check out the guys on Zoom who've sent their questions. What about situations where the boss, this is Beatrice Molindwa, where the boss is in cahoots with the difficult person? Then it's time for you to leave. That's it. Simple. Just go. Because you're not going to win. It's a no-win situation. The boss may actually be using the difficult person to deal with you. So you just go. There's no point in staying around. And that's why people talk about toxic work cultures. So don't waste time in the place. There is a question that I saw which was very interesting. I don't know if we can find it. Somebody said that they're short, they wear spectacles, and everyone else says because they're short and wear spectacles, therefore they're difficult. Well, there is a prejudice, there is a stereotype about short people being difficult, and that short people have a complex, and that it gets worse if they wear spectacles. I think it's really unfair on people of modest height, let's call it that way, because short or whatever is all relative. But people of modest height really have been stereotyped. And I think it's Bruno. He said, I'm short and wear specs. Many people say I'm difficult to them, just like other people who wear the same. Does height deficiency and wearing specs make one more difficult? There used to be a time when I was younger, they used to say people who wear spectacles have lugezi-gezi. So there's all sorts of stereotypes that come. But let's not be driven by stereotypes. Let's be driven by reality. Judge people based on how you interact with them. I've interacted with a lot of people of modest height, and they're some of the best guys that you can ever deal with. And then there's some really tall people who are just, I will not say, because some of you are watching this with your kids, so I will not say, but some of them are really a nuisance. I think that's a better word to use. So yes, it's got nothing to do with height. And someone says a manager is unhappy with me for not dealing with someone difficult on my team. Now the boss is being difficult with me. I am yet handling this person to finish something before dealing with them. How do I handle? Handle it in your own time. Tell your manager that you are the one in charge of this situation. If there is a problem, you will go back to him, and that you will not use this difficult person as an excuse for not delivering results. But if your manager wants you to deal with this person in the way that they want you to deal with the difficult, let that manager come and difficult person. Okay, that sounds a bit cryptic. It's very simple. We all know that we have managers who want to micromanage every step. They want you to deal with a difficult person, but they also want to prescribe how you deal with a difficult person. If that is the case, then let the manager come to the situation themselves and be accountable for the consequences of that decision. So you also have to be frank with your manager and say, you know what, I am handling this, and I think this is the best way. And it just happened a lot at the office. I would get complaints about people, head of department, and head of department, and head of department says, I'm managing this person. And I say, are you sure? They say, yes, I've understood this situation, because most times there's many more stories than you know. So then you say, okay, as long as you are able to deliver the outcome, that's fine. So let whoever is handling a difficult person deal with it. Tribal, OBs, OGs, or even staff that have stayed longer at the workplace. It depends where you are. If you are a newcomer and you find that there are already established groups, please first wait to join any or trying to deal or take them on. Even if you are the boss, even if you've taken over a department and you find that there are groups, tribes have existed for a long time, you're not going to undo them. Just understand that is now where your political skills come in. Spend time. Why do these people come together? They may be coming together because they're going to drink marwa. And for you, you think that they are together because it's at the office and so on. They may be together because they attend fellowship together. Then it doesn't affect you. So first understand why cliques emerge. And then, if you are the supervisor, if you are the overall boss, set up a system of merit so that people know that meritoriously they can be accommodated and can deliver results. Don't try to break cliques because they can actually gang up against you if you confront them directly. Then, Amanya Bright is asking me, how do you deal with staff who make it a habit to frustrate all the time they are approached? Again, are these your colleagues? Are these people who are your direct reports? Or are they your bosses? you manage them differently. As I said, your job is to understand, one, yourself and your circumstances. Two, understand those people. Please, whatever you do in your life, always remember that people or human beings are one big bottle of hormones, and they keep changing depending on the circumstances. Some people are even on medication, and the medication alters their hormonal balance. And the guy you were dealing yesterday who was nice and sweet and polite becomes a monster the next day, or stops talking to you. So you need to understand what are people facing. I told a story that there was a guy, he was a boss at our office, and the culture in that office was that all the female staff who worked in there had to come in the morning, kneel down, greet him, and then go to work. Now, you chose. If you don't want to kneel, you leave. Or you go and report that kneeling doesn't come with the requirements of working there, and then let the senior bosses now call this other guy to order. But you had better be ready for the consequences that will come to that. But it may not be so bad. So it really depends on the level of the staff. But if the staff are junior and the guy is causing you problems, just get rid of him. If he's being difficult, and as I said, shows any of the traits that I have just talked about, perfect. Let the guy go. So, how do you draw a line between kissing up or being kissed up and to manipulation? Some of these things are just human experiences. And first of all, what kind of family do you come from? The family is always a fantastic unit where to study people. If you have strong values and you know what you want, you're very clear what you're looking for, this stuff you'll always decide, do I want to be here? No. Or what compromise am I going to make this? Take on a couple more people from our spaces. Emmanuel Ekesit. I hope I pronounced your name well. Emmanuel on Spaces. Emmanuel Ekesit, can you speak? Emmanuel? Okay, he's... Can you unmute your mic and let's hear what you have to say? Emmanuel? Okay. I think you may have to try again. Brian S. Wamala. Brian, can you speak?
Joey, thanks for that question. Can you hear me, Robert?
Yep, very well.
Yeah, so I think you've addressed my question. My question was around how do you balance out your values as an individual and dealing with a difficult person. Because normally our values come first and then the difficult person.
Never ever complain.
Thanks, you've addressed that, I think.
Okay, great. Okay, Shamim K. Matovu.
Thank you, Robert.
One of my mentors.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. Thank you so much for such a wonderful session. What I wanted to contribute to, well, in regards to how we use our policies and procedures in the workplace, in the sense of ensuring that as we deal with people that we call difficult, we are able to adjust how we apply the policies and procedures depending on different personalities, but also be confidential in those dealings.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good. Thanks. Fiona Tumusime.
Thank you, Robert.
Yep.
I must say this is my very first time to listen to you on this space, and it's quite interesting, very informative. I'm really, really happy about it. I want to also the person who has actually sent a link to catch you. And from hearing, it's really amazing. Thank you so much. Communication maybe could also be another how we communicate, one way on how to deal with difficult people. Many times when you meet a difficult person, you wonder whether you are the one with a problem or it is the other one. So being able to judge whether you are the one with a problem or the other one, is where I may lack there. Could you please share more on that? Because when you find difficult in addressing a point, or you're not getting support to move to another level, maybe it could be your boss, you now start finding a challenge and you're like, am I the one with a problem? So I would want, at what point do you really get to know that this person is a problem?
Okay.
Is it because he has given you a no? Yes, please.
No, I was going to answer you. I was going to say.
Yes, please.
I was going to say that a lot of the problem that you're describing is as a result of our education system that has undermined people's self-confidence. So every time people confront difficult people, they think that it is their fault. So in your case, you're likely to think, oh, it's my fault. I have annoyed this person. He's a boss. He's therefore right. Well, the guy might be a total idiot. And you can see it. But because he's in a position of authority and a big office, you start to fear. So the way to deal with it is to reflect on your own circumstances. Were you correct? Does it sit well with your conscience? Is it your values? Then in that case, the other person could be wrong. But also, if you're not sure, consult, talk to your colleagues and find out, this is my situation. Do you think I was in the wrong? That's what you talked about, communication. Talk to different people. That way, you'll get to learn what is what. I hope that addresses the question.
Yeah, I think so.
All right. Okay, so now, I really need to sort of, okay, so then there's Charity. Charity is saying, how do I deal with a boss who creates circumstances that undermine one position in leadership? Or how do I deal with a boss who undermines my efforts and competence? One, during the one-on-one sessions, please make it very clear that the actions of your boss are making it impossible for you to do your job. And if you can, please keep a record of those actions. What is it that your boss does that undermines you? Don't make general statements that you're undermining me, because then it becomes personal. Just say, on this day you did this. On this day you said this. On this day you did this. The effect of these three actions discouraged me from taking on this course of action. Once you say that, it is objective and the guy will listen. If he doesn't listen, then you know he's a problem and you don't need that relationship. It's time for you to go, even if you have to go and starve. That's what I would say about that. Then, how do you deal with a difficult boss who is ignorant of a certain field and is not willing to learn from the resourceful subordinates? Wow. That one is a tough one. But in most organizations, especially in the workplace, they like written reports. So get into the habit of involving many people about the ideas you are suggesting. But this is a typical case. If your boss is not listening, there are two ways to go about it. Be political. Just tell him that you go and sell this idea. Let it be yours. Once the guy becomes the owner of the idea, then it makes him appear knowledgeable and an authority in front of his own bosses. There he will let you. Otherwise, the worst case scenario is just go to his overall boss and say, we're suggesting this. We think if we tried it, it would work. Then let the boss now approach him and start to prod him and say, have you thought about this area? Have you thought about asking or doing this? Then he'll gain the confidence to learn about the new area once he realizes that his own performance will be rated on the basis of these new areas. Guys, I have really talked today. It's a difficult subject about difficult persons from someone who quite a number of people think is difficult. But then again, my job really is not so much to give you, maybe one more question somebody has asked me, which I think is, talk about millennials versus baby boomers like myself. Do I have some experiences dealing with an articulate millennial, what would be the advice? So the advice I would have to those supervising millennials is this. Look at your own children. Your children are the example of the generation you're dealing with. The way you're managing millennials at your workplace, is that the way you manage your children? Children teach us many things that are new because they're on the front line of things that are new. What are the children teaching you that you need to learn from? Because that's how you keep, modern. So, and I gave an example the last time. I said, at the office, there were people who would come to me and say, good morning, sir. Then others would come and say, how are you, Mr. Kabushenga? Then others would come and say, hi, Robert. Others even went further and say, hello, Robo. And you just have to understand that it's a generational shift. The cultures are different. We got to a point because we had brought in broadcast. We were employing people who were 12, who were 18, who were very young. And guys would come to work with pink hair, red trousers, yellow socks. You can't insist that they should wear a tie. I mean, the moment you're open to those cultural shifts and changes, you as a supervisor, then you're going to get the most out of the creativity of this generation, and they will do it for you. For the younger people trying to get into the new world, yes, you may know more than us, and you may also, especially in the technological world, and you already see things, but you still have to deal with us in a position of authority. So you also have to learn now. You may not accept our conservatism, but as millennials now, you also need to learn how do you break through, how do you create an alternative world outside of. I mean, if you're living in my house, you won't change the rules because I am the owner of the house and the rules will be conservative. But if you want to change the rules, if you want to have a different set of rules, maybe you go and live in your own place and convince me and persuade me that your rules are actually better than mine. And that's how it works. And I'm happy, Emmanuel, to have this debate on Twitter and talk about it more because it's important. And I think for many baby boomers, as you call us, we're not open-minded enough. We think that young people are a problem and they're going to break everything down. But those are the control freaks. Some of us are quite happy to engage with younger people. I mean, you think about it. You have baby boomers in their 50s and 60s busy admiring the work of a teenager called Bukayo Saka when he goes to play football. So all this is opening up the world, and internet and all these things are making the world better. Guys, it's been great. It's 8:30. I have to go. This is it. Have a good night. See you on Monday. I have another young person, and I'll tell you on Sunday who it is, and she'll be coming to mentor us. Fresh voices, sharing experiences, looking into the future, hoping that you do better. Have a good night. I want to thank my guys at Apt Media who make this possible. Solo, Fuji, you're great guys. Thank you so much. Our sponsors, including my own coffee. Have a good weekend.
Never make it out of that tower, nothing ever happened, and it's no secret that the boat, the